In general, I'm a kind of do first, ask for forgiveness later type person. Still am. And that's something that's not necessarily the best feature that to have in the corporate environment. You cannot really assume that you are done learning ever anymore. And if you see a person that refuses to learn, that's probably the largest red flag that you could have, that you never want to work with a person like that, because that's a dead weight pretty quick. LLM is not going to solve everything. But also, the problem is actually solved by taking an average, right? You don't even need a model. You don't need anything complicated. You just need to understand the problem. One of the problems I think that LLMs and AI, modern AI will bring is that people are ignoring junior stuff, right? There's a lot of you read that say, oh, the simple tasks are going to be outsourced. So why do we need to hire junior staff? And it will backfire in the future, right? Why? Because where you're going to get expertise.
You're listening to Data Analytics Chat, where data meets career.
Welcome to Data Analytics Chat, the show where the world's leading data and AI professionals share the decisions, lessons, and breakthroughs that shape their careers. Today, I'm joined by Misha Trubskyy, Head of Claims Data Science at Mercury Insurance, a leader driving innovation in AI across the insurance space. In this episode, we'll unpack defining moments that shaped Misha's career, the challenges he's faced, and leadership principles that have guided his success. Then we'll look into the data topic, which, because most data leaders are wrestling with right now, is why hiring and retaining top AI talent has become harder than ever, and what the best companies are doing differently. Misha, it's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
So let's dive in. Misha, because we dive in actually, could you give the listeners a quick introduction to who you are and the work you're leading today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm originally from Ukraine, came to the United States as a graduate student here in Boston at Northeastern University, and stayed all of my career spent in analytics. Started as an econometrician, that's the regional data scientist, so to speak. Spent about 14 years in consulting environment in academia doing research, and then switched over to corporate, starting at Liberty Mutual Insurance for about 10 years, doing both claims and product data science and advanced analytics. And for the last year and a half or so have been with Mercury Insurance, building up their practice of claims data science. Started with a small team, building up the team, starting to build up the models, deploy models for claims automation, claims triage, severity calculations, and so on, trying to build the successful claims organization that is data-driven, that is digitally driven, and knows how to make decisions based on data insights. So that's short story of Misha. Yeah.
So I guess what excites you at the moment is a lot happening in the field. What's exciting you seeing today?
Certainly a lot of happening in the field, and I think it's been an interesting time overall. I think when you think about my career from beginning to end, it's interesting to be in a field that kind of blossomed and grew into strengths right now. 20 years ago, it wasn't as sexy, for the lack of a better word, and it wasn't not as much in demand. Right now, what's exciting is obviously this introduction of AI and the alleged ease that it should bring to some of the work. I am admittedly I'm not a skeptic of the technology, but I'm careful with how this technology is getting implemented and how we should think about this technology. So it's interesting to navigate that kind of enthusiasm and fad culture that we see around us, at the same time trying to actually solve real business problems, deal with dirty data, deal with stakeholders, educate stakeholders in how to actually use the product that team like mine would produce, and makes it interesting overall. And technology is helping greatly. Certainly makes some of the stuff that we're doing easier, more streamlined. But there's still a lot of challenges in how to utilize this technology, how to do basic stuff still, how to fill the gaps that organizations have, even before they can fully get full benefit from the current innovations that we're seeing around us. So all of this makes it interesting times to be where we are.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like the business and tech have come together. So there's always going to have the stakeholder challenges there, isn't it? You've got to educate everyone. Also, everyone's got to learn the massive changes
Yeah.
that's happening across the business. So it's unwinding all that, isn't it? And mixing it into create impacts and get the ROI that businesses need. Because in the day, we still need to focus on business principles, growth, saving efficiencies, that sort of thing, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And specifically, the claims game is a really interesting one because there's a lot of human component into this, right? We're not making kind of decisions based just on data. There's a human there are two humans on each side of every claim, right? You have insurance company that is represented by an adjuster that needs to make decisions, that needs to be fair, but also loss conscious and cost conscious, right? And you have a person on the other side that probably not having fun time being a claimant, right? To a lot of people, that's the worst thing that ever happened to them. So you can't put, in many ways, you can't put a person that is injured, for example, in front of AI, right? That's not the right thing to do from insurance company standpoint. So how do you navigate it? How do you choose the right technology? How do you choose the right way to navigate the individual claim, but also how do you choose to navigate thousands of claims at the same time that come through your company? Kind of creates a very interesting mix of problems that sometimes compete with each other. Sometimes you have to pick and choose what you're doing. I think specifically claims, I'm actually glad that I'm in claims of all other places right now, because I think it makes it more interesting overall to do what we're trying to do.
So, because when you look back at your career, has there been a moment or decision that sort of changed everything for you?
Yeah, I think, like I said, my career split in two parts. One is focused more around consulting in the academic environment. I was a part of consulting research outfit inside the university, and then I switched over to corporate, and that certainly changed how I had to operate, how I had to think, and a lot of challenges in an environment that there was before. It was a small group. We were focused on kind of public policy issues, trying to use this state-of-the-art econometrics at the time, trying to do models. The level of expertise was extremely high in terms of knowledge of the subject matter that we were working through. And that in corporate environment, it's a different environment. You're not fully independent. You can't really risk as much often. You have to follow certain politics and internal environment and procedures. So that was certainly something that I had to learn, and the first year and a half was somewhat of a challenge for me. In general, I'm a kind of do first, ask for forgiveness later type person. Still am. And that's something that's not necessarily the best feature that to have in the corporate environment. And you have to learn how to collaborate a little bit more with people across the company, but also across the spectrum of competencies. So that was somewhat challenging, and something that admittedly still probably learning how to deal with those issues, even after, 13 for 14 years doing this. Yeah.
I bet. And then, so did you have doubts during that period?
No, I think I did have some other experience working in corporate environments, so some of it back in Ukraine. I didn't have doubts. I knew that I wanted to take that leap and get out of kind of more academic place into more corporate place. it just was surprising. It was a little bit different from what I expected at the time. It took some learning, but certainly was the right move for me. I never doubted that, and enjoyed working. And I think some of my skill set and independence really paid off. I was able to make a mark by going rogue multiple times and creating kind of analytical products that people not necessarily were asking to do, but just using expertise and experience from consulting, from academia helped building those products. So yeah, so there's certainly no doubt, just a challenge that I had to overcome for some time.
So did you get support through this stage, or was it more yourself? How
I
did you
was
do it?
lucky. Yeah, I was pretty lucky. I got into a group that had similar experience to mine. Before I was working with multiple people who were similarly educated to me. They understood my background. I understood their background. They also spent some time in consulting. And yeah, so it was I got lucky. We had a pretty tight group that helped each other to navigate this environment. And we ultimately were all successful within the company. Yeah, it's a lot to some degree, but also really good people around you.
The power of humans.
Yeah, yeah.
Every leaders has a battle story. What was the toughest challenge you faced, and what did it teach you about leadership?
Yeah, I think what was interesting and very very unexpected for me is the fact that the people were expected to be fairly similar, very homogeneous, right? There were rules within the company that you have to follow, and you've evaluated on a very strict matrix of things. Here's what you need to know in terms of your technical proficiency. Here is how you need to communicate with your stakeholders. Here is what you need to do to develop yourself. And I think that was missing on individuality of one particular person. Somebody is extroverted, somebody is introverted, somebody learns differently or communicates differently. And I found that to be challenging when it was applied to myself, that I was put into boxes quite heavily. And also as I became a leader of people and manage people, try how to navigate this my desire not to do that, not to put people in boxes, and at the same time trying to navigate corporate environment where the boxing was pretty prevalent and almost demanded. And I've had a number of people that I either hired or inherited from all the teams that come to me as a poor performers, and you realize that they're not actually poor performers. It's just the management is asking them to do things that they're not. It's not that they're not good at it, but the way to do it is not the way to ask them to do it. For example, some people want more independence. Some people like to just take a problem and go away and come back in 2 weeks with a solution, right? So all sorts of issues like that you face, and that was a little bit interesting, kind of to learn again how to navigate it for myself and how to navigate it for other people. And in general, my approach to managing and leading people, first of all, I try not to manage anybody. That's one of the things that I try not to do. There's a difference between managing a leader, and I certainly try to be a leader, is try to find what ticks with every person. Try to be as individual as possible with every person that works for me or works for my team, so that they can shine within with their strengths. And it has been a kind of consistent challenge for me, I would say, but also I think it's what makes successful teams. And that's what makes me being a leader that on average gets good reviews and good feedback from people that I work with. So that's been interesting. I would say that's probably the challenge that I as from leadership standpoint, thinking through constantly and trying to work through.
So then did you learn this the hard way then?
I learned it the hard way, in the sense that, I came in without understanding that something that's learned as it was applied to me, when I literally, sometimes I wouldn't understand why I had to comply with certain things or behave in a certain way or wait for some decisions to be made versus just go and do stuff. So that was something that I had to learn for myself first. And then as I became more comfortable with that, understood why these requirements are in place, I was able to, as I took on leadership positions, being more flexible in those requirements with my people and help them navigate that and help them shine in their own way within my team. So in a sense, that was the challenge.
Yeah. Now, I like as you mentioned, you've got to adapt your approach to each individual, because every person has a different need, and everyone's got different background, different experiences, lots to work in different ways. So I think as a good leader, you need to have that. What's going to work best for this individual to get the best out of them? Because that's what you want out of your team, don't you? You want to get the best out of their performance, because they'll make you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you need to understand some people, and you have to understand why people come to work, right? We tend to default into this work for the sake of the company or for the sake of shareholders, right? But the reality is that a lot of people come to work for fulfillment, right? A lot of people come to work to learn, to communicate, right? Not necessarily to quote unquote bring value as a main driver of people, right? So you have to take that, you have to take the why you're here and still channel it so that you bring value and you make the company grow and you help people within the company, help leadership within the company to accomplish goals that they have. And that takes a little bit of getting to know somebody, getting to know why they are doing what they're doing. And that I think I find it interesting, right? I find it interesting. I find it better than just pushing people to do things, right? Oftentimes you have, here's the project, do it. Why am I doing it? What's the point? How is it fitting into the larger picture? What is it for me? And you have to be able to answer those questions to the people that work for you or with you. And when you can do it well, you'll be more successful, in my view, than if you can just make people do stuff.
And it also is about the individual being self-aware of what they actually want as well. Because I think there's so many different companies out there nowadays. You need to find one that's going to, like you said, have why do you want to come to this? Why do you want to work for this company? Like yourself, you've got a strong background in insurance. Obviously, that must be of interest to yourself. So if you've got something you're interested in, you are going to be putting a lot more interest and effort into the work because it's just interesting. Yes, keeping your brain active.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find is that a lot of people are driven by interest, right? By learning. So it's not that you have people in insurance that maybe for them it's not about insurance, right? Maybe for them it's about how do I use data in my world? How do I use data? How do I use the data that I have in front of me to answer certain questions? Is it about insurance per se? Is it about insurance pricing? Or maybe it's not necessarily that what the interest is, right? People could go to work for other companies, not insurance companies, and be interested in this similar task. So it's important to know what is it that drives people. And again, in my experience, learning is a big driver. A lot of people learning is a must these days, right? You cannot really assume that you are done learning ever anymore. And if you see a person that refuses to learn, that's probably the largest red flag that you could have, that you never want to work with a person like that, because that's a dead weight pretty quick. But a lot of people, driven by learning, driven by personal challenges versus kind of company challenges. And then you channel that into company becoming more successful. And I think that's the approach that to me, that proves to be successful over and over again.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what mindset or skills have helped you grow into leadership?
I think so. I would say, and again, I'm speaking for the field that I'm in, right? Not maybe in general, but I think probably applies to general as well. I think in today's world, there are two two or three things that I think would help anybody in leadership position, especially in data science or AI or whatever we want to call it these days. One is the technical proficiency. I do place a lot of value on technical proficiency, and it doesn't mean that you have to be able to do everything. The spectrum of technical skills these days is extremely wide, from fine-tuned programming skills to data skills. But you have to understand a lot of it, and you have to be able to be really good at some of it. And I think for me personally, the fact that I spent, again, beginning of my career in academic environment where technical skill in data analytics, in statistics, in econometrics was developed at a pretty high level, that keeps helping me a lot. I can, even if I don't know something, I can take on a relatively technical paper and understand and be conversational in a subject. So that's for me important. Hands-on experience comes out of that, right? You do see people that are educated well and have a lot of technical expertise, but not necessarily have done the work. At least in some aspects of the work, right? You can't imagine anybody being proficient at all aspects these days. It's just simply impossible. But then it becomes, so those are the hard skills, so to speak, right? And then becomes what is probably arguably becoming more important. Communication, critical thinking, empathy to the large degree, right? How to be empathetic about people's problems, how to help people learn, how to help people navigate the environment that they're in, being a mentor. Those are softer skills that one need to develop and to be a successful leader. And those that I'm trying to, some of them are easier for me, some of them are harder for me to maintain, but those are that I'm trying to develop and exercise. It's important to exercise those, train, practice how to do these things well over time, consistently.
Yeah, and I agree. It's constant learning in that respect.
Yeah.
And I guess how did you go about learning in then leadership qualities, like the softer skills? Was it through like peers? Was it mentoring, training? How did you do it?
I never had formal training in leadership. Peers. I was lucky over my career to have great mentors and great people that I worked with. And you learn, I think you learn things that are not obvious. You learn that it's okay not to know something, or you learn that it's okay to be wrong sometimes and being okay with it. So those are skills that probably harder especially for younger generation to accept. And you observe people, you pick and choose what works for you. You read. Yeah, I probably can't say I had any sort of formal training like that, but mentorship and working with great people and talking to people and having friends around you who are in the same kind of position, that would help me. And that's how I learned some of the softer skills, kind of leadership ideas that I have.
I think it's at the time when you work with great people, you don't realize that they're going to impact your future, in my opinion.
Definitely.
I think you look back now and you think, actually, him or her, whoever you worked with, had that quality, and then you take that and then blend it into your skill set, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And the maturity comes later, right? And you always think to yourself, oh, I wish I knew that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But certainly you learn things, and maybe you don't understand them at the time, but you absorb, and at some point it comes out. Yeah. So, great people is the key. It's luck. A lot of times it's luck, right? When people look for jobs, I think, especially those who can pick and choose, that's one of the things that you think about before you get hired. Make sure that you do a lot of due diligence, right? And that you pick a team that complements you, that you're surrounded by people that are great and help you, and you can help them, versus hoping for the best. That never works out. I don't think that works out well for anybody.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the non-monetary benefits, because if you work for a great leader, like, that's going to impact your future. Like, it's just obviously people need obviously certain money, etc., to live, etc. But also you need to look at the external benefits, like keep the team, what's the work you're doing as well, that sort of thing. There's a lot that goes into it, which I think people do overlook a lot of the time. Like, you always, in my opinion, you should meet team members, because if you're working with a great team, like we've discussed, it's just going to benefit your career down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly advise people to, when they get hired, sometimes it's unfortunately maybe not possible. Sometimes people, especially in the tougher markets like we have right now, sometimes people need a job. But if you have that opportunity to ask, even after you already signed the contract, meet the team, try to get to learn what people are interested in, what drives them. It applies to both people in managerial positions that inherit the team, right? That's probably the most challenging environment for any leader, is to come in a team that's already in place and trying to take over and learn about people. In my current position, it was a little bit easier for me because I was lucky to be able to hire most of the people on the team. So you look for people that fit in your understanding and your culture, and trying to get good people that you feel will be able to work together well. But if you inherit the team, that's obviously much more challenging, because you don't have the choice, and you have to adapt and learn and insert your value into the team and make sure that everybody benefits. It's the worst thing that a new manager comes in and there's no value that they can bring other than manage, essentially. There's no leadership that they can actually bring. But so they end up just managing you, and then it's end up micromanaging you. And that's the worst quality in any person in the leadership position that you can have. Yeah. Did I lose you? Sorry.
Yeah, let me not do that again. I've been looking at it. I think someone tried calling me. Okay. If you could give one piece of advice to an ambitious data professional who wanted to lead, what would it be?
I would say you have to learn. So it's a great question. I like it. You have to understand. You have to make an effort to understand how what you're doing on the technical side fits into your company's larger picture. And not only from a system standpoint, I have a model that pops up, adjuster is doing something, right? And that gives them recommendation. You have to take what you're doing and literally go through every decision that people are making based on your numbers or your model or whatever it is that you're producing. Who is doing it? Why? What is the downstream from that decision? What is the upstream from that decision? And you have to do it with everything that you do, and you have to learn how to make it part of your workflow when you are IC data scientist. Because when you take on a leadership position, that's where you shifting your focus to, right? You're shifting your focus to from 100% technical details of every project that you're doing, right? You're not creating features anymore, right? You're not building pipelines anymore. You're trying to think, how's the product of your team fitting into the company at a very detailed level? Because that's how you're going to be judged as a team and as a leader in the end. And I think that's missing with a lot of people. People are so focused on what language I'm programming in, what tool I'm using, what kind of pipeline I'm building. And they forget that we're not doing it for academic and fun purposes, right? We're doing it for a very specific purpose that has to fit with the larger purpose of your organization. And I think that's where any leader that, especially in the data, in data science specifically, needs to start with, right? Because if they fail at that, if they're not able to do, that becomes an issue down the line as they progress.
Well, that's
Okay. Just wait a Misha. Sorry, I'm just
I received a digital receipt. I need to know.
What?
Will it be if he's done?
Misha, I'll just go check. We can edit this.
No worries. Yeah, no worries.
What else are you doing?
He has received it.
That's just doing something for me. Oh, God. Sorry, there it is. That's good. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, ready? So we'll move on to the data topic. And also, we're going to look at the current hiring challenges in today's market, which obviously is a challenge for many businesses. So from where you sit, what are the big barriers companies face today when trying to hire great AI and data talent?
So I think there is a lot of people on the market, right? So if you just want to hire people, right, that's not that hard. Obviously, when you want to hire the right people or people that work with you and going to produce value, that's where the obvious challenge kind of comes up. I've been on a hiring spree for the last year and a half, give or take. And what I see is a couple of things. There's a somewhat of a disconnect between what companies want and what people can offer, right? A lot of companies, you look at other companies or at the general job offerings, right? They're looking for this unique person that knows all of the technical things under the sun and can do everything that's possibly could be done. And these people usually don't exist, right? And on the other hand, you have candidates that see these job descriptions and create resumes and create profiles that are just filled with keywords. So you open a resume and you have a profile that has 300 keywords, and you just look at it and you say, there's no way you know this. Maybe you've seen the name. So it becomes really hard to separate the realistic kind of the skill that people have from the desired skill that you need actually to have on your team. In addition, a lot of skills are getting outdated pretty quickly these days, right? So if you know something in 18 months, 24 months, that skill could be pretty gone, right? So I think that was one of the bigger challenges, taking the candidates and really finding, which of them, because you post a role and you get 1,000 resumes. The challenge is who of this 1,000, even at face value, could be a good fit for your company, for your group, rather. So that's been challenging to go through something like this. And when we hire, we are trying to be specific about what is it that we're looking for, but we also have a limitation, right? We have to know that, especially when you hire more junior people, that you have to be open to educate. You have to be open for people to come in without some of the technical skills that you might need on the team, right? You might want to think about hiring people that have the ability to learn, have the eagerness to learn, instead of having the exact set of skill sets that is probably not actually accurate. That is probably not something that people can actually utilize in their work. So I think that's been there are a lot of challenges, but there's probably the first challenge that you face when you're trying to hire somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously the technology is obviously its benefits, but also it's created challenges for those people doing obviously your ChatGPT, CVs, matching keywords, which
Oh yeah.
Anyone can have is you want to share value, what you've done. You want to start a story of your expertise, and because like you said, you can't be an expert in everything, and each business is on a different data journey, and they'll need different skill sets at different times.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I look, you picked it up really well. You said it really well. And when I look at candidates at resume review stage and at the later stage, I'm looking for somebody who is genuine, right? Here's what I've done in my previous role. Here's the technology I used. Here's the outcome. Here's the outcome that I pursued. Here's the outcome that I created. Here's how you look for people who actually have done things. And not only that, they're not robotic almost, right? They're not just executing on some sort of technical requirements. They understand the value, they understand the connection that they bring to their current or previous employer, and they are ready and confident and competent to bring it into your group as well. So it's challenging. It's not that often that you find people like that, actually.
Yeah, the hiring is a massive challenge for anyone. And I think
Yeah.
it's finding people that have got the problem-solving skills. And I guess the way that it's going now, as though in my opinion, it's obviously you've got a lot of tech tools now to do heavy lifting. You need people that have got now it's being able to communicate with the business and doing actually understanding the data and using what model is going to be best to get to the right solution the quickest, because you can't just use LLMs for everything because it's not necessarily going to be the best route. I think it's just getting the common sense and that intelligence to solve your whatever problem it is the quickest.
Yeah, exactly. And common sense is actually going to be at the highest value that you can get out of people, because you often have. So one of the problems that you have is that you mentioned LLM, right? LLM is not going to solve everything, but also the problem is actually solved by taking an average, right? You don't even need a model. You don't need anything complicated. You just need to understand the problem, understand what data are available to you, and understand what type of decision are people trying to make based on you, right? And more often than not, you don't even need anything complicated. You just need maybe a table. Maybe you need to pull some data and just give intelligence to your customer instead of building a model. Internal customers tend to come to you and ask for something complicated. Can you give me an AI solution that tells me something? And you talk to the customer and say, hey, why don't we look at the average of last 3 months? Would that be a solution to your problem? And often the answer is, oh, you know what? Yeah, I think if I knew what happened over the last 3 months on average, I think I know what's going to happen next month. So how do you need to find people that are able to have this conversation, but also be okay with executing on it and not necessarily going and trying to find the most complex solution or the most fancy solution or the most solution that sounds the best for today's kind of world. And that's critical thinking and being able to execute critical thinking against yourself as much as against kind of the problem that's an interesting skill, and that's what we're trying to find in people when we interview and talk to people and getting them to join the company.
Yeah, I think it's just been all real, because the amount of time we've had people pass interviews, because maybe during the interview process, there's so much to remember in your field. Sometimes you're just going to forget things, and you'll end that. You need to be able to tell, say if you're interviewing, the interviewer, this would be the process, how I'll get the answer. Not just go down spend 5 minutes blabbing about an answer which is made up and you're completely wrong. And people are trying to know your process thinking, because if you can problem solve, that's what businesses are going to look for. Because you can't remember everything in statistics, data science. It's too much. It's just more about how can you solve the answer, and it's a critical thinking element.
Yeah, exactly. And these days, one of the good uses of LLMs is to help you not to remember some of the things. What you need to do, you need to understand the concept and to understand how they're used and what they mean. But the exact formula or exact line of code, that's why we have technology these days. You don't have to remember that. And in fact, I don't think anybody does. So when I interview, I often ask some technical question, and I'm not even looking for the correct answer. I'm looking for the logic behind it. What does some measure mean? Especially if people mention it during their interview, they say, oh, I measured some sort of metric. I say, okay, can you explain to me why? And even if they're wrong, I'm looking at the way they explain it to me, the way they outline why the problem was. And you're right. During the interview, you can get nervous, you can get confused things. That doesn't matter. Another thing that I do, if I have a PhD candidate, I always ask about the dissertation. And that's it's so interesting to hear people And you could see the communication ability right there. Can you take what probably is pretty complex topic that you wrote dissertation on, and can you explain it in simple terms? And a lot of people really do well, but a lot of people can't really. And I've been in interviews where somebody would say, "Oh, you wouldn't understand." Okay, that's an interesting response to give in an interview. That's probably not a person that you want on your team that refuses even to go there. But it's been very helpful when you try to pick out candidates. Those questions, simple questions that people can't really execute on, which is interesting to know right before you hire somebody.
Yeah, definitely. And storytelling is so important nowadays because you've got,
Yeah,
like you said, articulate your technical knowledge into business terms. 'Cause the stakeholders, they just want it easy to understand. Don't need to impress them with all these new technology like jargon. They just need to know what the outcome is, basically.
yeah, yeah. Yes, in many cases, people don't. When you work with your customer, internal customer, in many cases, nobody cares about the technical aspect of it at all, right? We as data scientists, we like to focus on the technical aspect. Oh, I did this model, I used this fancy technique to come up with features, but your customer doesn't care, right? Your customer wants to know what's in it for them. How is it helping them do their work? And they can't care less what type of fancy technique you use. And that's where the value comes out. Can you actually explain it to a customer? Can you entice them to use the result of your work? Because that's how you become successful in what you're doing.
So we'll move to the next question. What's one misconception about data hiring that holds leaders back from attracting stronger candidates?
I think we talk a little bit technical, right? So the technical skill is the demands for technical skills are being overemphasized, right? People are focusing on specific set of narrow technical skills that candidates are selected on. And they are missing on understanding the softer pieces of it: business acumen, communication, critical thinking, and so on. I think that's the biggest kind of disconnect and misconception that companies have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So one thing I think is missed is attitude testing or personality testing, because that's going to show individual like whether they're going to be able to step up their game. Because business is so complex nowadays. Everyone's got different requirements, and also there is a gap in the market with skill sets. So people need to be able to adapt for different companies when they move. And it's this. Not many companies test people's personality traits and see how are they got that ability to do that.
Yeah, I think I think personality test is more. I think it comes down to having your larger group talking to this person and trying to put the person outside of kind of interview zone in some of the interviews, get it a little bit more personal. I haven't been exposed to personality tests, to be honest with you, so I haven't seen. I know that some companies make you take them and score you on some sort of scale on a personality. I haven't seen those. I haven't been tested on those, and it would be interesting to see how well these tests do when it comes to picking specific personality, how realistic they are in terms of picking specific personality traits that you potentially want from a person. But yeah, certainly in my world, we are accomplishing it by making sure that people talk to their peers, right? People are interviewed by not only by managers, but also people they'll work with, or people interviewed by the stakeholders, trying to understand that part of the job and get into that personality trait as close as possible, because it's a tough one. I agree with that. How do you do that exactly? Yeah, it's not super clear.
Okay. And of course, the companies say there's a skill shortage, and candidates would say companies are too picky. Why do you feel there is a disconnect, and who's right?
I think so. I think both are right in many ways, right? the companies are so it's a matching problem, because if you think about ideal state of the world, where you have a list of jobs on one end and a list of candidates on another, and you can pre-assign almost, right, people to jobs, right? That problem would go away to some degree. But in the reality, I think both are correct, because companies are looking for the specific skill set, which doesn't really exist. So, for example, I could come out on the job market and say, I want somebody who's a great data scientist and also who knows claims. And that's not a long list of people, right? It's just by design, it's not. Somebody who looks at my posting could say, oh, that's a very picky person because they're ignoring all the great talent that comes from banking or startups or what have you. And the candidate side, you have a lot of people that are on paper very, very prepared, right? But, for example, never dealt with dirty data, right? In my world, data is bad, just bad, period. And you get somebody, especially younger candidate that comes out of the academic environment, they usually deal with a single table, well-prepared data. So how do you pick a person that has that experience? And to have that experience, you had to work a little bit in some corporate environment where data is poor, where data is, even structured data is extremely dispersed and unstructured, and you have to know how to put it together. So by the end of the day, those two statements are somewhat correct. I think the challenge is in the market itself. The market is not efficient, and maybe recruiters could somehow fix it. Maybe there is some mechanisms that could be utilized to make the market itself a little bit more efficient. But as of right now, I still think it's going to stay this way. I think we as employers will look for a set of relatively specific skills, and people will not have them, right, at the same time. It becomes a game of picking the right person with a skill set that they have and teaching them and making sure that they are proficient enough to acquire the skills that you need them to have. So that's what I think about this particular dichotomy, so to speak, in opinions.
Yes, obviously everyone's, like I said before, everyone's on a different data journey. If you've got a small data science team, and like you said, you need that knowledge of claims in your team, obviously your requirements are going to be rigid, aren't they, really? But if you've got, say, a data science team of 20 people, you can probably, I'd be open to hiring people from different industries, because then they can learn that claims expertise. So I think where it is, as you get a lot of people applying for jobs where they're not right. Everyone's on a different stage in their data journey, and I think businesses are they've got different requirements, and that's the problem. So this on the flip side, could businesses invest more into staff?
Well, yeah, and I think they should. And I think this technology that is coming up over the last 2 years or so, that's actually helping with it, right? Because it becomes much easier to invest. So we always look at buy versus build decisions when it comes to vendors, right? But I think it could be applied to people as well. And it's important. So it's a great question. One of the problems I think that LLMs and modern AI will bring is that people are ignoring junior stuff, right? There's a lot of you read that say, oh, the simple tasks are going to be outsourced. So why do we need to hire junior staff? And it will backfire in the future, right? Why? Because where you're going to get expertise, who is going to do the work in even 3-year term, right? When some of the people who are currently doing the work will start moving on and doing some other things. So it's extremely important to actually acquire junior staff that maybe not necessarily proficient enough for some of the work, but can be taught. So it's build decision, right? You get junior staff that probably not gonna do great immediately, but you build them and you teach them to do the work that they'll be able to do in 3 to 5 year term much better. This being said, I think that the basic skill set is still extremely important, right? You can't, I'm a big believer in technical education, because even with LLMs, even with all the AI, you still need people with STEM degrees, right? You still need people with mathematical backgrounds, so that they actually have a deeper understanding of what is it that they are doing. And it's extremely important. I've seen too many examples where people without the basics, they're having a hard time actually performing well in these roles. So to answer your question, it's a combination, right? You still need people, you still need to hire people with basic technical skills, right? But you should be in a mindset where you are teaching them to do your work, your specific work that you are asking them to do over the longer period of time. So the investment here is extremely important. And I think applaud those companies that have analyst programs. They hire out of college into analyst programs, do rotations, and then spread around analysts, and then teach them and train them to be really great computer researchers in the future. So they're not thinking, okay, this guy is going to contribute in 18 months. They think in 5 years down the road. Those are the best places to, especially for younger, out of college, out of master's degrees, people to look for jobs, because that's where the company has a culture of longer term thinking, and that's very important.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of Fortune 500 companies that we've helped, the minimum for data science roles, the minimum they want is masters, because again, you've got that theory, you can apply the theory into a business context. Maybe for the more techie, like data engineering roles, just like a bachelor's is more, they're open to a bachelor's. But I think it does, if you've got that solid understanding in statistics, like you're going to just, your field in insurance, like it's numbers, you need to be good. I see a lot of people go try and do the shortcut route, do like data camps and things like that, but you just not, in my opinion, all the big companies want people that have got minimum masters, because you bring so much value through that knowledge.
So I, in some way, agree with that. I think I have experience with all sorts of people where you could have a really strong bachelor's in mathematics, pure mathematics, and be extremely successful, because that gives you the level of abstract thinking that just helps you in this world pretty well, right? And like you said, some of the camps and even some of the kind of master's degrees out there, they give you really, really surface knowledge of things, right? They're trying to cram a lot of subjects into 1 year sometimes. So people do get exposure to some of the theoretical pieces, but not really enough, right? And what really stands out is a solid kind of undergraduate background, either in engineering or computer science, or just pure math or pure chemistry or something like this, something technical on average, more technical, yeah. But I see that, yeah, a lot of companies saying, oh, we need a master's degree for you to have. And I encourage people to look a little bit beyond potentially what degree says. And okay, what does it mean? What does your undergraduate degree mean? If it's applicable to the technical side of your job and non-technical side of your job, and then make those calls versus to say, oh, we just need a master's degree. Because I could give you a lot of examples where a master's person is going to be inferior, even in technical skill set, to somebody with a solid bachelor degree from like a solid institution. So yeah, I would say that's probably not the right measuring stick for everybody.
Interesting thoughts. How does an unclear strategy, poor data quality, or like weak organizational maturity impacts the company's ability to attract top talent?
Quite a bit. And I think the short answer is impact it impacts across the full spectrum. On one hand, if you have immature organization with, there are a couple of things here, right? You could have an organization that is mature in the sense that they made a decision to be digital and they have a good plan in place and they have a good strategy. And strategy needs people, and they're doing a good job hiring those people and creating the organization and moving forward, right? So that's an organization that is well set up to be an advanced data-driven team within next 18 to 24 to 36 months, right? That organization will start hiring good leadership. That leadership will start hiring good team members, technical, that will be aware that organization may be not super mature technically, but will be able to build up, go from there, right? So that's one thing. If the organization is technically immature, that creates a bit of a problem because a lot of candidates are asking what tools you're using. What kind of toys I'll be able to play with? Can it be efficient, right? If you don't have answer to those questions, you're going to lose a lot of candidates. You're not going to be able to attract some of the better ones because a better candidate would probably come, a better technical candidate will probably come with some knowledge of core tools like AWS or Azure, right? And they would want to be able to use those tools. And some people come with more specific requirements or specific interests. If you have an immature organization on technical side, you're going to have a problem with some of the better technically savvy candidates. If the organization is immature, then it's a problem because you have an issue on both ends of the equation here, right? You don't really know what you're looking for yet. You don't really know how to hire. And you are putting out this message. Any experienced candidate would be able to find out if your organization is immature. You ask questions such as, give me an example of a data decision that you made as an organization, right? And it's very easy to pick out when it's a real or when it's something made up. So you're going to have a real problem hiring strong candidates. The weaker candidates, it's easy because weaker candidates often just want a job and they'll take whatever's in front of them. But a stronger candidate, people with multiple job offers, potentially people with choices, you're going to have a really hard problem finding those and retaining those because people could get hired and then in 3 months they'll be out of there because you guys don't know what you're doing. So I think it affects a lot. It affects how you look for people. It affects the type of people you can attract, and it affects retention. Short-term retention is actually, I've seen it to be a problem. People leaving after under 12 months because they are not satisfied with one of the aspects of the company. Either there's no data strategy, there is no understanding of tool usage, or tools are limited, or there is no, so all sorts of problems that could lead people leaving or not being interested in your role that comes from immaturity of the organization or technical immaturity, right? Either data immaturity, kind of strategy immaturity, or technical immaturity. So that's something that you see quite openly in the market these days.
Yeah. Do candidates ever ask you about strategy or maturity?
Yeah, that's actually a good filter because you want people to ask these questions, right? Yeah, you want people to, especially when you hire for more senior roles, you want a person to be interested in that. You want to ask, and not only a lot of people ask about technical maturity because they want to know, okay, I know Azure, but I don't know AWS. Is it okay? Is it okay that I can learn? But the best people will ask you about your data strategy. You ask you about the examples of the projects that you're working on, how they do almost interview you. And you can filter those. I think to me, that's a great signal for any candidate. They can, and then you have a conversation that is it registering with the candidate? Is it just a question that they ask ChatGPT to ask, or it's a real question that they understand my answer? It makes it a great conversation. And it's a filter for me, for sure, to know that people are asking questions like that.
Yeah, definitely. It shows intent that they're actually interested in your business as well.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
you said, shows, but And they shows that they've switched on, in my opinion, because if they're asking these types of questions, they see a career down the line, not just a job, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. People interested. Yeah. And you want people that are interested looking at 5 to 10 years down the line, not, or I'll be out on the job market in 18 months and I'll go look for something new or else. And they're interested in being with a company that gives them that opportunity, that gives them that learning opportunity and that execution opportunity to be there for 5 to 10 years. And it's good to see. It's a good test for the candidates.
Brilliant. So when you interview candidates, what signals tell you someone can actually drive your business outcomes?
I look for, we talked about all the technical stuff. I don't resumes that are just filled with keywords. If I see the resume that keyword driven, that's a red flag for me. But what I'm looking for is being genuine, right? Being genuine in what is it that you are offering. And you can even see that from resumes pretty clearly, that you see the resume of a candidate that trying to be proud in their work outcome. I did this, I accomplished that, and I helped my company with this particular problem. So those are the candidates that prefer. And then when you talk to them, you are trying to really find a genuine response from standpoint of, I really like what I do. I'm really proud in what I was doing, but I really also understand what I was doing. I really understand the problem. I understand why I use certain technique or certain technology. I really understand how it's affecting my customer, right? Either internal customer, external customer. I really understand how I measure the outcome. Here's the outcome. Why is it important? I understand that. So those are the kind of candidates that stand out, and you can see them really easy. I ask questions, and obviously it's easier with the more experienced people, with the people that have 10 years or so under their belt. But even for the younger candidates that have a few years of experience, you could still pick that out, right? You can still see whether just following some sort of protocol and they were told to do this model and that's what they did, and they just throw it over the gate somewhere, over the fence somewhere, and somebody's using it, I don't know why or how, versus to say, okay, I actually took a pride in my work. I made sure that it helps my customer. I made sure that I know exactly how, I know exactly what I did. And that's the candidate that I would go for versus just somebody who's technical at face value, and that's it. That's where it ends, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that you said about like the authenticity of individuals, because there's stories in there where people, like individuals, are using AI during interviews. It's, come on, like,
Oh no,
it's crazy.
yeah,
Like,
we've seen that. Yeah, we've seen that already.
oh, really?
So yeah, I saw it somewhere. I read about it, and I'm like, no, I thought that seemed so strange, but we have seen it. So people are clearly and that's when genuine response comes into play. You can absolutely hear when people are reading from ChatGPT answer, and so suddenly that becomes immediate no, that becomes immediate rejection. That's nobody. But we have seen it. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Crazy.
And even
say they pass the interview, start the job, they're going to get found out, and then they're going to just lose their job.
Exactly.
So I know people want to impress
Yeah.
people during interviews, things like that, but you need to show your worth. And Dave, you can't again, interviews are stressful. There's a lot to remember. If you freeze, just be up front. We've had so many people like interviews for firms as well for us. Just said, look, I froze. I just said how I picked the answer, and hiring managers are like that. Like, you got to be realistic. Like, people will just freeze during interviews, but when you hear the stories
Well, yeah.
of people just cheating, it's so bad practice.
Yeah. Well, it's bad, but it's also so obvious. It's
Yeah.
not. Yeah, it's hilarious how obvious it is. And yeah, I mean, I personally hadn't had an experience like that, but folks that interviewed had some screening interviews for my team, and they were telling me that you interview a person and they're obviously cheating, and you just sit there, you don't know what to do with it. And it's hilarious. Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously on the other side, retention is now just as hard as hiring. There's a lot of opportunity as well, which don't help. So what generally keeps top performers engaged once they join a company?
Yeah, I think retention for the next maybe 12 months will be a little bit easier because the market is tougher, so people are not as eager to jump ship. But retention has been an issue, and we've certainly seen people jumping ship, some within 18 months and even faster. And I think there are three, four things that I think are important to people that they look at. We talked about strategy, right? Is there a strategy for the company when it applies to my subject matter, but also for the group, right? Can I see myself being here in 5 years and executing on the strategy? Is it clear? Is it transparent? Is it attached to the business, right? And if people see that, they'll be more likely to retain. Obviously, individual, right? Is the title structure? Is there a way for me to grow? And some people, and I think it's a mistake, right? A lot of companies, they force people to be a manager if you want to grow, right? That's the only way to grow is to become a manager. I think it's a mistake. You have, in my world, in data science world, there's a lot of people that don't want to be a manager. They just want to do more complex work and they want to be more independent, work with stakeholders directly, but they don't want to be managers, and that's okay. So is there a structure? Is there a title hierarchy that would allow me to grow and get to VP, senior VP level in terms of compensation, but still be individual contributor, world class or higher level individual contributor? So that's extremely important. Management, even with a strategy, even when everything is small, is clear, management, and especially, you know perfectly well that the biggest predictor of retention is the immediate management, right? So I think that's one of the key pieces is your immediate manager and your manager maybe, are they on your side? Are they looking out for your interest? Are they creating opportunities for you to grow, to do new projects, to challenge you? Most people, especially younger, they want to be challenged. They don't want to just repeat the same project over and over again, right? They want different subject matter. They want more complex ideas. They want to be able to challenge themselves, right? And that's oftentimes, I really like when people are self-driven, when they can create those opportunities for themselves. But it's tough, and it's often on a manager, on your immediate manager, to create those opportunities for people, to make sure that they're growing, to push them to grow as well as to help them grow, right? Some people need a little bit of a push. Some people can help themselves, but you need to be there for both of those situations. So those are the things I think that going to create a better retention. Yeah, right now the market is, on one hand, I do see positions. We have positions. I see other insurance companies hiring for data science role. But on the other hand, you do see companies are laying off people, right? You have announcements coming out every week that this or that company kind of laying off people. So market is tough right now, but retention it will be a challenge. It has been a challenge. It will continue being a challenge, but it's a solvable challenge, right? It's not about money, right? People default into money only. Obviously, money matters to a large degree, but it's about environment, about the future, right? If you can have the future in your head for this person, and this person will be more likely to stick around and be a productive member of your team.
It's also like, obviously, with recruitment, you need to, like, what's the why? Why do I want to join? Why do I want to join this insurance firm, or why do I want to join a pharmaceutical firm? Is finding that why and then making sure, obviously, the company have got that, like you said, strategy for them to excel, because people want to develop, they want to grow, they want to learn. Like, once they stop learning, that's why people leave, because they get in. It's like Groundhog Day. They don't want the same day every day. They want to be growing their careers, because then as soon as you're learning, you are going to, in my opinion, you are paid market conditions, you are going to stay with the business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, if you start to stagnate or stop learning, for a lot of people, that's a signal that, okay, something is off, something is wrong, right? And I need to look. And yeah, and sometimes people are not necessarily even actively looking, but if they feel that something is wrong, you look and something potentially comes up. And it's hard to say no to opportunities oftentimes. So you have to create internal opportunities essentially, right? And make sure that the internal opportunities satisfying and fulfilling and promote growth for individual person.
Yeah. So looking 12, 24 months ahead, how do you see the hiring landscape evolving and how should leaders prepare for the future?
Yeah. I think, it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting question. I think, so right now, it depends a little bit on how this AI technology pan out, right? Like I said at the beginning, I'm a fan of technology. I like the promise of it, right? I haven't seen the success, the overwhelming success yet. We've seen the studies from MIT, from Stanford that are mixed, right? You have a lot of failures with implementation. And I think that's what's happening right now. People were extremely enthusiastic about AI technology. And I think has been some over hiring of people for AI roles. But now it's leveling off. People see limitations. People see failures. Not a lot of AI projects are actually being put to production. A lot of them don't go that far. So I think for the next 12 months, probably, people will be waiting for the next stage of what this technology offers. And that will probably cool the market to some degree, especially if we're expecting, there's a lot of talk about recession and a lot of talk about the bubble in AI technology and stuff like that. So especially if some of that negativity becomes reality, that certainly will have a big implication on us. Another thing is, I think you and I talked about it already, is that technical skill set, right? You have this range of technical skills that people put themselves in. It used to be that you are a statistician, right? Then it used to be that there was a statistician, then there was an econometrician, right? And now you have almost data science as a skill set is almost becoming a little bit obsolete. You don't have generalists anymore. It's impossible to be a generalist, right? Are you an LLM guy? Are you an MLOps guy? Are you AI governance person? So but that is right now, that's not very well defined yet. I think that needs to settle down a little bit, and that will indicate the future for the next 12 to 24 months again. Yeah, and I think it's coming back to that build versus buy again, right? Is it that we need to build our pipeline from the junior talent now, knowing that the junior talent will not be able to contribute right now, and investing the money into junior talent, right? We kind of wait for talent to develop, and maybe 24 months from now, buy develop talent that will help us to grow to the next stage of the business of what we want to do. So I think those are the driving factors. And I think it will be a little bit cooler job market wise for next 12 months at least, just because of how economy is operating, just because where we are in terms of hiring and what the requirements are and what the expectations are. I think it will be a little bit less active than the last 2 years or so when it comes to the job market.
Oh, brilliant. Misha, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
This has been a standing chat, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Cool.
And then to everyone listening, if you found today's conversation valuable, please do support the show, give us a follow, leave a quick review, or even share it to a friend or colleague. Just help people discover the conversations we've had. And thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Data Analytics Chat Podcast. Subscribe to our channel for more stories and insights in data and career.